It was spring, the start of my first year at Kakunoshima Public High School. A new class, new friends, a new me? Well, hardly. This town was fairly small, and so I already knew a few friends who'd be entering the same school. Besides, people are still people. It's not like I could suddenly change into a whole nother person either. Yet, for some reason, I still had that new beginning sort of smile plastered all over my face as I walked the path leading towards the school. Though that smug expression was quickly wiped off as the entrance ceremony began, with the headmaster droning on about ideals, youth, and whatnot. Why is that all seem so far away for someone like myself? Maybe it's because in situations like these, the person talking isn't talking to anyone in particular, but rather, it's just an image of what they imagine the person to be like. Let's say you're trying to make a speech for an average student, but in reality, that average student is just a sum of general attributes. Such a person doesn't really exist anywhere, and so you'd end up talking to no one in particular. Or maybe it's just me thinking too much. As I wondered if I should make a poll for the audience, not really, the long speech finally came to an end and we were led to a classroom, like a pack of sheep being herded off to somewhere. It's a weird feeling, kind of like losing your own identity and becoming one with the mass of people. Not that I wouldn't have expected as much, so everyone in class introduced themselves one by one, while giving their name, hobby, or maybe some funny detail about themselves. Though, rather than an identity, this is more like a first impression, or maybe even a role you wanted to play. On the other hand, each of us probably has a side that they would rather not show to other people. And why was I thinking about all this? Mostly probably because it was my own turn was slowly closing up, and naturally, you'd want to make a good first impression. I'm Shibata Haru, and my special feature is not having any special features. I don't think too much of myself, so I thought cracking a joke wasn't too bad of an idea, even if it wasn't incredibly smooth either. Nah, but I like to take things easy, and I read a bit in my free time. What's that? I'll bet it's just manga and light novels either way. One of my so-called friends from middle school, Keita, was the one responsible for that comment. In any case, the rest of the class deemed it as funny, so I guess that the whole deal could have gone a lot worse too. As the bursts of laughter slowly quieted down, the teacher called the next student in front of the class, but for some reason, there was no answer. The teacher stared at the rows of students with a blank face. It was only after a long, awkward silence when he finally moved on to the next name on the list, and the rest of the class resumed like business as usual. Though I couldn't help thinking, what sort of a person would be skipping class on the very first day? Probably a huge delinquent? A shut-in? Or maybe she just happened to be sick. Oh well. On the second day of the new term, or more like the first real school day, this came up. So, planning on checking out the clubs? Well, maybe. I was sort of planning to join the literary club. What's with that? Sounds boring if you ask me. I don't think anyone asked you, but naturally I didn't say as much aloud. I kind of like reading though. Haru, you don't know a thing. High school boys should be doing things like playing in a band, basketball, or soccer. And just what do all of these have in common? Duh! All of these are great ways for becoming popular with the girls. Give me a break. As if you could become a star player with no experience, or set up a band when you don't even have an instrument. We'll figure out something with guts and willpower. Come on, bro, it's you and me. What do you say? No thanks. Fine. No hard feelings, bro. But there's always a spot open for you in my band. So it was a band after all. I wonder just how far I'll get with that plan. Either way, according to the student's handbook, we'd be able to find both the literary club and the school bands at the liberal arts building. Separated from the rest of the school buildings, it housed the art room on the first floor, music rooms on the second floor, while the rest, such as the photography and literary clubs, resided on the third floor.
Well, I'm off!
Right. See you around, or something. While Keita headed off to the music room, I continued to the third floor, searching for the one door with Literature Club written on it. Reading the name tags on the doors one by one, I walked slowly past the floor. Photography Club, Occult Club, Manga and Visual Arts Research Society. You just had to wonder what dark schemes could be going on behind those doors. Yeah, right. And why was it called a research society instead of a club? But I had to move on. Standing in front of the fourth and last door on the corridor, I had finally found what I had been looking for. Well, that's a bit of an exaggeration, since it turned out that for some reason there was no one inside. Hey, anyone? I tried calling inside one last time, but there was no answer, and the door was locked as well. When I tried asking about the literary club at the teacher's office, I learned that the club was actually about to be disbanded. Or that's what I was told. Well, that was no good. I was running out of options here, but I didn't feel like joining Keita's one-man band project either. So, I decided to head to the school library instead. The library was a fairly small one, with only a few rows of shelves, while the rest of the room had been turned into a studying space, with both single desks and bigger tables for groups. The selection of books wasn't too great either, with most of them being textbooks on history, science, and other things. Well, that figures. In comparison, there were hardly any novels at all. With a randomly picked title in my hand, I picked a seat from a table. The rest of the library was completely empty at this hour. Obviously so, since it was way too early to start studying for the exams yet. Well, at least that's what I thought, until I spotted a girl sitting on the same table with just a seat between us. Honestly, it was as if she barely had any presence at all, and so I had completely missed her a second earlier. Looking closely at her, she had long dark hair, glasses, and a surprised expression, as if she was trying to hide behind the book she was holding in her hands. In a situation like that, it felt like I sort of had something to say to her. Sorry. I guess I didn't see you over there.
No. It's okay.
For a second it seemed as if she was trying to say something, but after a while, she apparently changed her mind and returned to reading her book. I probably wouldn't get anywhere with her unless I started the conversation myself. I guess you like reading? Well, more than a genuine question, it was more like an attempt to open the conversation.
Yes. It's like being taken away to another world.
She looked away while searching for the words within herself. Somehow, it felt that there was a tiny hint of sadness about this scene. Sorry, maybe I shouldn't have asked.
Traveling to other galaxies or magical realms, visiting the past or the future.
She snapped out of her pondering, suddenly engaging in lengthy explanations of various stories she had read in the past, reciting huge schemes, tiny details, and everything in between with an excited look on her face. It was as if she had suddenly opened up to me, almost like becoming a different person altogether. Or maybe I was just imagining, and she was this friendly with just about anyone. Nah, the former explanation sounded much nicer, so I guess I'll just stick with that. Somehow, we forgot all about introductions. Shibata Haru. For a second, I had the weird feeling as if I had heard the name somewhere before. Nah, it couldn't be. Her first name was different, and she didn't seem like the type to skip class either. But with all that talk from earlier, there was one thing I just had to ask about. By the way, do you write anything?
No, I only read.
That was the answer she insisted on, but her excitement from earlier would make anyone doubt otherwise. What sort of stories would she write, I wondered to myself.
What about you?
With a voice meager than a little kitten, she returned the question. There was something about this girl that would make you want to hug her tightly whenever she looked at you like this.